What if I told you that one of the most, valuable and fiercely discussed artificial intelligence companies of 2026 doesn't actually build AI models?
Right, which sounds totally wild.
It really does, because instead of spending billions of dollars and hoarding microchips to train some massive digital brain, they just built a $1.3 billion empire by acting as the nervous system.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that they looked at the gold rush of artificial intelligence and decided, you know what, let's not mine for gold. They built the incredibly sophisticated railroad connecting all the mines to the rest of the world instead.
Exactly. And if you've built anything in tech recently, you know exactly why this railroad is just completely necessary.
Absolutely.
You sit down to build an application expecting this clean, elegant development process, right? But the second you step into modern AI development, you're looking at just a chaotic mess of different API keys.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It is. You've got one for OpenAI, another for Anthropic, one for Google, DeepSeek, Mistral, xAI. I mean, it is a total administrative nightmare. You spend way more time managing accounts than actually writing code.
Right. It is the absolute definition of infrastructure friction.
Hmm.
You want to be designing this brilliant application, but instead, you're basically acting as an accountant and like a security bouncer for a dozen different AI providers.
Yeah.
Because each one has its own billing cycle, its own documentation, its own weird error codes that you have to decipher.
And that headache is the exact mechanical problem we are unpacking in today's deep dive.
Right.
We are looking at a really comprehensive 2026 tech breakdown of a unified API gateway called OpenRouter.
Yeah, OpenRouter.
So our mission today, whether you are an indie hacker stretching a seed round, or a startup founder, or an enterprise developer dealing with legacy code, or honestly just an insanely curious tech enthusiast, our mission is to figure out if the future of AI isn't about choosing the best single model, but rather using an orchestrator to seamlessly manage them all.
Because the infrastructure layer of AI is shifting right under our feet, honestly. And to understand why OpenRouter has exploded in value like this, we really have to look at how they just completely eliminate that fragmentation for the user.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like having a universal remote for every streaming service. Instead of logging into 5 different apps to find a movie, you just type what you want and the remote handles the rest.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, because calling it a unified API gateway sounds a bit dry, right?
It does sound a bit corporate.
Based on the notes here, it's basically an automated air traffic controller for your data. It isn't flying the planes itself.
Right.
Instead, it's sitting in the tower, monitoring the weather, checking fuel costs, watching the runway traffic in real time, and instantly deciding which plane lands where. But can you clarify exactly how this remote handles the heavy lifting, like rate limits and authentication?
Yeah, so that is a highly accurate way to look at it. OpenRouter sits right in the middle as this smart intermediary between you, the user, and over 400 different AI models.
400? That's insane.
Yeah. From more than 60 different providers, it completely abstracts away the chaos. You just get one API key.
Just to define that briefly for anyone who isn't writing code every day, an ATI key is essentially a digital ID badge that allows your software to talk to another company's software.
Exactly. So instead of managing 60 ID badges, you literally just have one, and you get one consolidated bill at the end of the month.
Which is amazing. But I have to ask, how exactly do you get developers to switch to this? I mean, usually moving to a new infrastructure means tearing up all your old code.
Well, they solve that beautifully through their compatibility layer. OpenRouter designed its entire interface to be perfectly compatible with OpenAI's structure.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because OpenAI was the early market leader, practically everyone initially wrote their applications to talk to OpenAI.
Right, everyone was using ChatGPT's underlying tech.
Exactly. So OpenRouter just tells developers, hey, keep your code exactly the same. Don't rewrite anything. Just swap out the OpenAI web address for our web address, paste in our ID badge, and you instantly have access to 400 models.
Oh, wow. So it's a complete drop-in replacement. You change one line of code and suddenly you have the entire ecosystem at your fingertips.
Literally one line of code.
But wait, providing an invisible safety net across 60 different companies has to be incredibly complex.
Well, it is.
What happens when the underlying provider crashes? Like if I'm routing through OpenRouter to get to Anthropic and Anthropic servers melt down, doesn't my app just break anyway?
Well, that is where they introduced a crucial mechanic called zero completion insurance.
Okay, what is that?
So in the real world, APIs fail constantly. Traffic spikes happen, servers crash. If you are hard-coded directly to one provider and they go down, your application goes offline. you lose users.
Right, your app looks broken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because OpenRouter sits above the ecosystem, they handle the fallbacks invisibly.
Wait, so they just reroute the flight?
Exactly. If you request a task and the primary model is unresponsive, OpenRouter automatically reroutes your request to a different provider hosting that exact same model or, to a highly comparable model. And it does this in a matter of milliseconds.
Wow.
Your end user never even knows there was an outage.
So you aren't just buying access, you're buying resilience.
Precisely.
But honestly, having access to 400 models and doing real-time automatic fallbacks, that sounds incredibly expensive to maintain. Which brings us to the economics of this.
Yeah, the money side is fascinating.
Right, because the sources claim that OpenRouter actually saves users money, which seems totally counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Usually putting a middleman between you and a product means you pay a hefty premium.
It does seem counterintuitive, yeah. It really comes down to their pricing structure. They operate on a pay-as-you-go credit system.
Okay.
When you buy credits, there's a small processing fee, about 5.5%. But crucially, there is absolutely zero markup on the base prices set by the AI providers themselves.
Let me define a quick term from the research here, just so we are all on the same page.
Sure.
AI providers charge by the token. You can think of a token as roughly 3/4 of a standard word. So if a model costs 1 cent per 1,000 tokens directly from the creator, it costs exactly 1 cent on OpenRouter.
Yep, no hidden markups.
But I'm going to push back on this economics argument for a second.
Go for it.
If I'm an enterprise user burning through millions of tokens a day, a 5.5% fee on my credit purchases is a massive chunk of change.
It adds up, sure.
Right. So why wouldn't I just take the time to go direct to Google or OpenAI and save that 5.5%?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to calculate your total cost of operation, not just the raw token cost.
Okay, how so?
Yes, there is a 5.5% fee, but that fee is entirely dwarfed by the concept of dynamic routing.
Right, dynamic routing. That's the idea that you send easy questions to cheap models and hard questions to expensive, high-reasoning frontier models.
Exactly.
So you aren't paying a premium to use a supercomputer to answer a simple password reset question.
Precisely. Because, the cost delta between a small, lightning-fast model and a massive frontier model can be like 100x.
100 times. Wow.
Easily. So if you dynamically route 80% of your mundane traffic to the cheap models, your overall bill just plummets.
But wait, this is where I get confused looking at the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
If I ask a customer support chatbot a question, how does the router know it's a simple question without sending it to the expensive model to read it and figure it out first? It feels like a chicken and egg problem.
That is a brilliant question, and it's actually the secret sauce of intelligent routing. They don't use the expensive generative models to evaluate the prompt.
Well, they don't.
No, they use what are called embeddings, or very lightweight classifiers. These are incredibly tiny, cheap algorithms that run in a fraction of a millisecond. Their only job is to scan your prompt and assign it a complexity score.
Ah, I see. So it's like a triage nurse at an emergency room.
Right.
The nurse doesn't need to be a brain surgeon to know whether you need an aspirin or an MRI. They just do a rapid assessment and route you to the right department.
Exactly. That lightweight triage happens instantly.
Yeah.
And the savings from keeping those simple tasks away from expensive models completely erases the 5.5% credit fee.
That makes total sense.
And furthermore, think about developer time. If a new, highly efficient model drops on a Tuesday, how much does it cost an engineering team to rewrite their application's code to test it in production?
Oh, that's weeks of work. Tens of thousands of dollars in engineering salaries, plus the opportunity cost of not building new features.
Right. With OpenRouter, testing that new model takes 3 seconds. You just change the model name in your existing request.
Because of that drop-in compatibility?
Exactly. The savings in developer salaries alone makes the infrastructure fee totally negligible. Plus, they offer a free tier with over 25 models, allowing indie developers to experiment with multiple architectures without spending a dime.
Which is a brilliant customer acquisition strategy.
Oh, it's genius.
And because the economics and the sheer convenience are so compelling, the market has reacted violently. The financial traction in this 2026 breakdown is staggering.
It really is.
OpenRouter jumped from $10 million in annual recurring revenue in late 2025 to over $50 million in 2026.
Scaling your ARR by 5x in a single year doesn't just happen because a tool is trendy.
No, definitely not.
It happens when a tool becomes mission-critical infrastructure that companies realize they simply cannot function without.
Right. And it pushed their valuation near $1.3 billion, with over 1 million developers on the platform. But here is the aha moment in the source material that really caught my attention.
Yeah.
They aren't just hoarding this success. They use their position in the middle of all this traffic to release the State of AI 2025 report. They analyzed over 100 billion tokens to provide these gold standard popularity rankings.
And we really have to emphasize why those 100 billion tokens matter so much.
Right.
For years, the AI industry has suffered from gamified benchmarks. A company releases a new model and claims, oh, it scored 98% on a simulated bar exam, or it solved some complex math dataset.
Right. But developers don't actually care if the AI can pass the bar exam.
Exactly.
They care if it can format a messy spreadsheet without hallucinating data or, write clean Python code on the first try.
Exactly. Academic benchmarks are just easy to manipulate. But OpenRouter sits at the center of actual real-world production data.
Because they see every request going through.
Right. By analyzing 100 billion tokens flowing through their gateway, they have accidentally become the only truly unbiased source of truth in the entire AI industry.
That is wild.
They don't have to guess which model is best. They can see exactly which models developers are actually trusting with their real applications and which ones are being abandoned.
So they can see who is faking it and who is actually delivering.
Exactly.
That kind of intelligence is priceless. But of course, whenever there is a $1.3 billion valuation, there is going to be fierce competition.
Oh, for sure.
The source compares OpenRouter directly with a few heavy-hitting alternatives, and we should definitely walk through those, because this isn't a one-size-fits-all market.
No, not at all.
Let's look at little LM first. How does OpenRouter, which manages everything for you, compare to an open-source option like that?
Well, Ladle M is a fantastic alternative for a specific type of user. It's open source and self-hosted, meaning you download the software and install it directly onto your own company's servers.
Okay, so you bring it in-house.
Right. And the massive advantage there is total sovereignty. You have absolute control over your data, and there's zero extra credit fees. You skip the middleman's markup entirely.
But the trade-off is that you have to be your own plumber.
Yep.
You have to ensure the server never goes offline, you have to patch the security vulnerabilities, and you have to manually update the API connections every single time a provider changes their system.
Exactly. OpenRouter is for teams that gladly pay a small premium to have an entire team of engineers worry about the plumbing for them. LLMs is for teams that want to completely own the pipes.
That makes sense. And what about Portkey? The research highlights them as a major player as well.
So Portkey leans heavily into enterprise governance.
Okay.
While OpenRouter is famous for its massive variety of models and sheer developer simplicity, Portkey focuses deeply on observability. If you are a massive Fortune 500 company, Portkey gives you incredibly granular dashboards.
Like tracking individual users.
Yeah, exactly. You can see exactly which employee and which department is spending money on which model, and you can implement incredibly strict compliance guardrails.
Although, looking closely at the OpenRouter documentation, they certainly aren't ignoring the enterprise space either.
True.
They offer service-level agreements guaranteeing uptime, volume discounts, and BYOC. I see BYOC in our notes, bring your own key.
Right.
But honestly, if I'm a giant enterprise and I already negotiated a massive 20% volume discount directly with Anthropic, why on earth would I run that through OpenRouter? Aren't I just adding an unnecessary choke point to my system?
It's a great deduction, but BYOC actually solves that exact problem.
How?
With Bring Your Own Key, you plug your direct, heavily discounted Anthropic ID badge into OpenRouter. OpenRouter acts purely as the traffic cop, utilizing their automatic fallbacks and dynamic routing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But when it comes time to pay, OpenRouter doesn't charge you for those tokens. The billing happens directly on your negotiated Anthropic account. You get the orchestration of the middleman without losing your corporate discount.
That is incredibly smart. So what does this all mean? The winner of the AI race isn't necessarily the company building the biggest brain. It's the company building the best nervous system to connect them all.
That is the fundamental paradigm shift here.
Yeah.
The actual value in the market is migrating up the stack.
Right.
Raw intelligence is becoming cheaper and more commoditized,
Yeah.
but the orchestration of that intelligence is becoming incredibly valuable.
But, and there is always a but, when we talk about billion-dollar infrastructure shifts,
Always.
placing a middleman between you and your AI introduces a whole new set of vulnerabilities that we need to critically examine. If you're listening to this and thinking about moving your entire company's workflow to a unified gateway, what are the actual risks here?
Well, the most glaring is the dependency risk.
Yeah.
We praise their resilience and zero completion insurance, but that only protects you if the underlying models fail.
Wait, what if OpenRouter itself goes down?
Exactly. What if the air traffic control tower itself loses power?
Right. Doesn't matter if all the planes are fully fueled and ready to land. If the tower is dark, the whole airport is shut down. Your application goes offline.
Exactly. Now, it is rare, given their redundant systems, but it is a single point of failure that you are voluntarily introducing. Then you have the physical reality of networking, which is latency.
Right. Data has to travel.
Yeah, when you send a prompt directly to OpenAI, it travels from your server to theirs. When you use a gateway, it travels from your server to OpenRouter and then to OpenAI.
So you are physically adding an extra hop to the data's journey.
Exactly. Now, that extra routing only adds a few milliseconds to the response time. For a text-based customer service chatbot, that is totally unnoticeable.
But if you are doing high-frequency algorithmic trading or building real-time voice translation where people are having a natural conversation, I mean, every single millisecond of lag destroys the user experience.
Precisely. And perhaps the biggest hurdle for enterprise adoption is privacy.
Ah, yes.
The legal side. OpenRouter promises, in writing, that they do not use your data to train models. They have all the enterprise compliance certificates. But fundamentally, you are placing a third-party company directly into your data stream.
I can hear the healthcare compliance officer sweating from here.
Oh, yeah.
If you are handling patient data or proprietary financial algorithms, getting your legal team to sign off on sending that data through an extra middleman requires a very painful, very careful policy review.
It absolutely does. But beyond the technical and legal risks, there is a psychological risk detailed in the research that I find fascinating: the paradox of choice.
Right, the paradox of choice. Having access to 400 models can actually paralyze a development team.
Completely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's the classic restaurant menu problem. A 40-page menu doesn't help me order faster, it just gives me anxiety.
It's so true.
When there were only 2 viable models on the market, the choice was obvious. Now you have hundreds of models, many with vastly overlapping capabilities, and they are updated almost weekly.
Yeah, it's impossible to keep up.
If you are looking at your AWS bill right now, you might be thinking, I do not have the time to sit down and write manual routing rules for 400 different models. It's crippling anxiety. So how do developers actually manage that choice without spending all day reading benchmark reports?
This raises an important question about where the entire concept of orchestration is heading. And the short answer outlined in the 2026 data is soon, developers won't choose at all.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they will rely on meta models.
Okay, what exactly is a meta model in this context?
So instead of a developer manually writing a rule that says, send easy tasks to Model A and hard tasks to Model B, they will simply send their prompt to OpenRouter's meta model.
Okay.
This meta model acts as a hyper-intelligent autonomous dispatcher. It reads your prompt, instantly understands its complexity using those lightweight classifiers we talked about, cross-references it with the real-time cost, speed, and capability of all 400 underlying models, and dynamically routes your prompt to the absolute perfect model for that specific query.
And it does all that on the fly.
All in a fraction of a millisecond.
Wow. So the router itself becomes an autonomous agent. The developer just says, hey, here's what I need, and the meta model negotiates the absolute best, cheapest, fastest way to get it done in the background.
Exactly. But it requires handing over a massive amount of control to an automated system. You are trusting the middleman's algorithm to spend your budget wisely and prioritize the quality of your application's output correctly.
That takes a huge leap of faith.
It does.
But I suppose as these routing systems are validated by real-world savings, that trust is being built. Which brings us to the core takeaway for you, the listener.
Right.
If we look at everything we've unpacked today, the unified APIs, the dynamic economics, the unbiased benchmark data, and the rise of meta models, the era of monogamy with a single AI model is officially over.
It really is. The new standard for developers is maintaining a well-managed harem of models. You aren't putting all your money into one stock. You are diversifying across different assets to hedge against outages, price hikes, and shifting capabilities.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And OpenRouter is simply handing you the terminal to manage that portfolio effortlessly.
So whether you need to simplify the messy code in your startup or instantly cut down your monthly token burn rate, or you just want to sign up for the free tier to experiment and see how different architectures uniquely think about the same problem, there's a clear application for this in your workflow today. Stop fighting the API key chaos and start orchestrating.
But as we look at this massive shift toward unified gateways and intelligent meta models that perfectly route our prompts in the background, it leaves us with a lingering question.
Oh, what's that?
If these orchestrators become so hyper-efficient that developers never actually choose or even see the underlying model fulfilling their request, will the big AI brands like OpenAI, Google, or Anthropic eventually become entirely commoditized?
Oh, wow.
Will they just become invisible compute engines to us, exactly like the anonymous server farms that host our websites today?
That is a wild thought to end on. If the middleman becomes the interface we trust, the geniuses building the billion-dollar brains just become the utility company providing the electricity.
Exactly.
We will definitely have to see how that power dynamic plays out. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take this knowledge, apply it to your own builds, and as always, stay insanely curious.